The stars stretched like a vast, indifferent tapestry above the colony ship Endeavour, its hull groaning faintly against the void. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrest of her command chair, knuckles whitening as the holographic display flickered with incoming transmissions. She was a woman of steady resolve, forged in the asteroid belts where one wrong calculation meant a lifetime adrift. Beside her, Lieutenant Kai Rin, the quick-witted engineer, tapped furiously at his console, fingers dancing like sparks on a live wire. "They're hailing us again, Cap, fourth time this cycle. Persistent bunch." Across the bridge, Dr. Mira Solis leaned against the bulkhead, her cautious eyes scanning the readouts. She adjusted her glasses, a habit from Earthside labs where data ruled and haste spelled disaster. The Endeavour carried 5,000 souls, settlers bound for Epsilon Eridani, dreamers fleeing a crowded solar system. But now the dream soured. The transmissions weren't friendly. They crackled with demands from the Vorath Collective, insectoid traders who'd claimed the sector as their own. Ilara straightened, her voice slicing through the ship's hum. "Put it on screen, Kai. Let's see what fresh nonsense they've cooked up this time." The hollow projector hummed to life, resolving into the image of a Vorath emissary. Its carapace gleamed under artificial lights, mandibles clicking in halting speech. Translator's word, rendering the words in crisp English: "Human vessel, you encroach upon Vorath domain. Surrender your cargo and depart or face reclamation by force. The hive does not tolerate interlopers." Kai snorted softly, leaning back. "Reclamation? That's a fancy word for piracy. They've been shadowing us for days." Mira shot him a warning glance. "It's not piracy if they think it's theirs. The Collective's treaties are fluid." Ilara studied the emissary's unblinking eyes, compound facets reflecting the bridge lights in 1,000 tiny stars. She knew the stakes. The Endeavour's holds brimmed with terraforming gear, seed vaults, and fusion cores, irreplaceable for the colony. Losing them meant starting over, or worse, drifting until supplies ran dry. But fighting? The ship had defenses, point defense lasers and a single railgun, but the Vorath fleet outnumbered them 3-1, their bioships swarming like locusts. "We come in peace," Ilara replied evenly, her tone measured like negotiating with a storm. "Our path was cleared through the Alliance Accords. We're not here to take anything that isn't ours." The emissary's mandibles snapped. "Accords are voids without enforcement. Hive law supersedes. Prepare to be boarded in one cycle, or we harvest what we will." The transmission cut, leaving the bridge in heavy silence. Alarms pinged softly, marking the Vorath ships closing in. Kai spun his chair. "We could outrun them if we dumped non-essentials. Shed the outer pods, lighten the load." Mira shook her head, voice tight. "And condemn half the colonists to cryo-failure? No. We need a better play." Ilara rose, pacing to the viewport where the Vorath vessels loomed, their hulls pulsing with organic veins. She thought of the briefings back on Earth. Humanity's edge wasn't in firepower, but in bending the rules others couldn't see. Boarding means they want us alive. Cargo's valuable, but so are we. Kai rigged the airlocks with false manifests. Mira, pull up those xenobiology files on Vorath psychology. If they're harvesting, let's give them something they can't digest. Kai grinned, cracking his knuckles. Deception it is. I'll make our holds look like a biohazard buffet. As the team scrambled, the ship shuddered, a proximity warning. The Vorath were closing fast, their shadows eclipsing the stars. Ilara felt the weight settle in her chest, not fear but the sharp clarity of choice. They wouldn't fire first. Not yet. But surrender? That word tasted like ash. Hours blurred into a tense vigil. Kai's hacks flooded the Vorath sensors with dummy signals. Fabricated logs of exotic Earth pathogens, quarantined relics from forgotten wars. "If they're as hive-minded as the files say, they'll hesitate," he muttered, sweat beading on his brow. Mira cross-referenced, fingers flying. "Vorath abhor contamination. It disrupts the pheromone chains. This could buy us time or provoke them." The first boarding pod latched with a metallic screech, vibrating through the decks. Ilara watched from the security feed as Vorath warriors, armored in chitin plates, breached the outer lock. They moved in synchronized waves, probes extending to scan the cargo bays. Alarms wailed internally now, but the crew held position, hearts pounding in the dim-lit corridors. "They're in," Kai reported, voice low. Scans showing red across the board. "Look at them freeze." On the feed, the lead warrior recoiled, mandibles flaring as its probe recoiled from a holographic plume of toxins. The swarm hesitated, chittering in agitation. But then, a larger figure pushed forward, an overseer, its crest glowing with authority. It ignored the warnings, directing drones to vent the bay. Ilara's plan cracked. "They're calling our bluff. Mira, any weaknesses in their suits?" "Basic seals," Mira said urgently. "But exposing them means..." The ship lurched as the Vorath forced another lock. Gunfire echoed faintly, stunners, not lethals, from the security teams. Ilara grabbed the comm. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the edge of the negotiation table, her knuckles whitening as the holographic display flickered with incoming transmissions from the Vexery fleet. The chamber aboard the neutral station hummed with the low thrum of life support systems, but the air felt thick, charged like the moments before a storm. Across from her sat Ambassador Krell of the Vexery, his iridescent scales shifting from calm blue to agitated crimson, tentacles coiling restlessly around his chair's arms. "We've made our position clear," Ilara said, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. She was the cautious one, always measuring words like rations on a long voyage, but today caution bordered on desperation. "Humanity will not engage in direct combat. Our aid ships are en route with medical supplies and engineers to rebuild what your skirmishes have torn apart." Krell's multifaceted eyes narrowed, reflecting the glow of the holomap where red icons swarmed toward the contested colony worlds. "Your refusal is an insult, Captain. The Kroth Dominion presses us on all fronts, their bioweapons scarring our hives. If you will not fight beside us, why should we trust your aid? It smells of weakness, a ploy to watch us bleed out." Beside Ilara, Dr. Liam Hargrove leaned forward, his wiry frame tense under the station's artificial gravity. The engineer in him thrived on fixes, not feuds, and his quick wit had gotten them out of tighter spots before. "Ambassador, think of it as investment," he interjected, tapping a control to zoom the map on a ravaged hive city. "Our tech neutralizes Kroth toxins without a single shot fired. We've tested it, saved a Vexery outpost last cycle. Fighting them head-on just feeds their cycle of retaliation." The chamber doors hissed open, admitting Commander Tira, the human liaison from the Alliance Council. Her presence was all grit, shoulders squared from years captaining frigates, but even she couldn't hide the fatigue etching lines around her eyes. "Reports from the front," she said curtly, sliding a datapad across the table. "Kroth forces intercepted one of our aid convoys. No survivors. They broadcast the wreckage as a message, 'Interlopers will burn.'" Krell's tentacles slammed the table, sending a ripple through the hollow projection. "See? Your pacifism invites this. The Kroth respect only strength. Pull your fleets back, or we'll cut ties and face them alone. Better to die honorably than cower behind human charity." Ilara's mind raced. The plan had been simple: deliver aid, demonstrate value without weapons, build bridges. But the interception shattered that. Liam's prototype neutralizers were irreplaceable, and losing the convoy meant dozens of lives, humans who'd volunteered, believing in the vision of peace through persistence. She exchanged a glance with Liam, who mouthed, "Adapt," his trademark spark undimmed. "We adapt," Ilara echoed aloud, pushing back from the table. "Ambassador, join us on the bridge. We'll show you the convoy logs, prove it's not weakness but strategy. The Kroth want escalation. We deny them the war they crave." Krell hesitated, his scales flickering uncertainly, but the weight of the datapad seemed to pull him in. As they rose, the station's alarms began a soft, insistent chime. Another Kroth probe vectoring in, testing the station's defenses. Tira's hand hovered near her comm, but Ilara shook her head. "Not yet. The real battle was here, in choices that could unravel everything or forge something unbreakable." Outside the viewport, stars wheeled indifferently, while the shadow of the approaching probe grew longer. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrest of her shuttle's co-pilot seat, the hum of the engines vibrating through her bones as they descended toward the fractured surface of Epsilon Prime. Below, the planet's canyons twisted like scars from some ancient brawl, their red rock walls glowing under the dual suns. She'd left her ship, the Endeavour, in orbit with strict orders. No weapons hot, no scans aggressive. That was the human way in this mess. Show up empty-handed or as close to it as starfarers could manage. Beside her, Zara from the Vexery Collective fidgeted with her iridescent robes, her multifaceted eyes darting to the viewport. The Vexery were all sharp angles and calculated poise, but Zara's caution showed in the way her tendrils coiled tighter around her datapad. "This landing site's neutral by treaty," she said, voice a soft chime. "But the Krell patrols have been pushing boundaries. If they intercept, they won't," Ilara cut in, forcing a grin that didn't reach her eyes. "We're not here to stake claims. Just to talk." She believed it mostly. The Vexery and Krell had been clawing at Epsilon Prime's rare mineral veins for cycles, their skirmishes escalating into a shadow war that threatened the whole sector. Humanity's Council had sent her as an observer, but Ilara had other ideas: bridge the gap before it swallowed everyone. The shuttle jolted as it touched down on a flat expanse of regolith, dust billowing like a sigh. Ilara popped the hatch, the dry wind carrying the metallic tang of exposed ores. She stepped out first, her boots crunching on the brittle ground, followed by Zara and their small security detail, two humans, silent and watchful, hands nowhere near their sidearms. They'd barely set up the comms array when the ground trembled. Not in quake, footsteps. Heavy, rhythmic. Ilara's pulse quickened as a Krell scout skimmer crested the ridge, its hull scarred from recent blasts. The vehicle halted, and out spilled three warriors, towering figures in segmented armor, their hides rippling with bioluminescent veins that pulsed aggression blue. Leading them was Thorn, a Krell she'd met once before at a tense summit, brash, with a mane of quills that stood like accusations. "Human," Thorn rumbled, his voice amplified through his helmet's vox. "You trespass on claimed ground. The Vexery's treaty is paper. Our blades make law here." Zara stepped forward, her tendrils unfurling in a gesture of placation. "Captain Voss comes under flag of mediation. We seek dialogue, not division." Thorn's laugh was a gravelly bark. He gestured to his warriors who fanned out, energy lances humming to life. "Dialogue? Your collective probes our minds while whispering peace. And humans, always meddling, pretending neutrality." His eyes narrowed at Ilara. "What game do you play this time?" Ilara raised her hands, palms open, the universal sign she drilled into her team. "No backing down, but no fight. No game, Thorn. We're here because this rock's killing you both. Vexery tech can't extract the crystals without Krell muscle, and your raids are just wasting lives. Let us show you a way that shares the hall. No blood, no borders." The Krell paused, lances dipping slightly. Zara nodded encouragement, her datapad already projecting a holomap of joint mining ops. Human designs for automated rigs that could divvy resources fairly, using AI to enforce splits. It was Ilara's pitch. Ingenuity over iron fists, turning enemies into partners through sheer stubborn collaboration. For a heartbeat, Thorn seemed to consider it, his quills flattening. Then a distant explosion rocked the canyon, Vexery flares, retaliatory fire from a contested vein. His warriors tensed, lances snapping up. "Lies." Thorn snarled, slamming a fist into the regolith, sending cracks spiderwebbing outward. "Your piece is a trap. Seize them." Chaos erupted. Zara's security detail drew non-lethal stunners, but the Krell charged, their armor shrugging off the pulses like rain. Ilara dove behind the shuttle, hauling Zara with her as lance bolts scorched the air. The initial plan, calm talk under neutral skies, shattered like the ground beneath them. Thorn's skimmer revved, prepping to ram their position. "Get the array up." Ilara shouted over the din, her mind racing. The comms could hail the Endeavour for evac, but that meant admitting failure already. No, humans didn't run from first contact fumbles. She grabbed a toolkit from the shuttle's hold, fingers flying to rig a quick jammer. If they could disrupt the Krell's vox by time to regroup. Zara huddled beside her, tendrils trembling. This was folly. They'll see us as a line now. "Not if we turn it around," Ilara grunted, sparks flying from the device. A Krell warrior lumbered close, lance raised. Ilara kicked a loose rock into his path, tripping him just long enough for her team to stun him down. But Thorn was closing, his eyes locked on her with predatory focus. The jammer whined to life, static flooding the Krell channels. Thorn roared in frustration, halting his advance. For a fragile moment, the skirmish hung suspended, dust settling around frozen combatants. Ilara stood, device in hand, heart pounding. Enough. Thorn, look, your own comms are jammed. No calling reinforcements. We're all stuck here. Talk or we all lose. He hesitated, quills bristling, the blue glow fading. The council chamber hummed with the low thrum of translators, a dozen alien species arrayed around the vast holographic table. Ambassador Lyra Voss sat at the human delegation's end, her fingers steepled, watching the Kreller envoy pace like a caged predator. The air recyclers whispered cool drafts, but sweat beaded on her neck anyway. 3 days into these talks and the fleet still loomed in orbit, a shadow over the colony world below. Refusal is not negotiation, the Kreller snarled, its mandibles clicking sharply. Your worlds encroach on sacred migration paths. Yield the outposts or we burn them from the skies. Lyra leaned forward, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. Burning solves nothing, envoy. We've offered joint resource surveys, shared tech for your navigation arrays. Why escalate when cooperation charts a better course? The chamber erupted in murmurs. The avian Trellix delegate fluttered its feathers in agitation, while the hulking Gorthan grunted approval, its eyes fixed on Lyra. She'd built rapport with the Gorthan over late-night strategy sessions. Brute strength tempered by a surprising curiosity for human history. But the Kreller? They thrived on dominance displays, and humanity's pacifist stance was unraveling their patience. Captain Elias Kane stood behind her, arms crossed, his flight suit still dusted from the shuttle ride up. He wasn't one for words, but his presence grounded her. The man who'd flown decoy runs during the initial skirmishes, buying time without firing a shot. Now he scanned the room, ever the tactician, noting the subtle shifts. The Kreller's aides exchanging data bursts, the Trellix whispering into a calm. We are not weak, Lyra continued, projecting the hollow map of the disputed sectors. Red lines marked Kreller claims, blue for human settlements. We're pragmatic. Fight and you fracture alliances across the quadrant. Your own records show the last war cost you 3 systems to internal strife. The envoy halted, its compound eyes narrowing. Pragmatism? You hide behind words while arming your borders. Elias shifted, his jaw tightening. He'd argued against this in private, send a single drone to demonstrate resolve, but Lyra had shut it down. Bravado would tip them into war. Instead, she tapped the console, pulling up archival footage. Human engineers redirecting asteroid belts for mining, no weapons in sight. See this. We rerouted a hazard that threatened your migration. No demands, no conquest. That's our way. The Kreller recoiled, but a flicker of uncertainty crossed its face, or what passed for one. The Gorthan rumbled, the humans speak truth. I have seen their forges. They build bridges, not blades. Tension coiled tighter as the envoy conferred with its aides. Lyra's mind raced. If they walked out now, the fleet would strike the nearest outpost. Families there, miners, scientists, counted on this. She'd promised them safe passage if talks failed, but evacuation under fire? A gamble even Elias called slim. Finally, the Kreller straightened. One concession. Share your redirection tech fully. Prove your words with action. Lyra nodded, masking her relief. Agreed. But in return, a ceasefire extension. Let our teams work side by side. As the chamber buzzed with tentative accord, Elias leaned in, voice low. Bought us time, Ambassador. But they're testing. Next move's yours. She met his gaze, the weight of it all pressing down. Time was the one resource they couldn't mine from the void. Outside, the stars wheeled indifferently, and the fleet's silhouette lingered like a promise unkept. Elena watched the holographic display flicker as the alien shuttle descended through the storm clouds, its sleek form cutting like a knife through the rain-lashed sky. The wind howled against the outpost's reinforced walls, carrying the metallic tang of ozone from the thunderheads rolling in from the eastern ridges. She gripped the edge of the console, her knuckles whitening, while Kai fiddled with a makeshift jammer in the corner, his tools clinking softly against the metal floor. "They're early," Lila said, her voice steady but laced with that familiar caution. She adjusted her translator cuff, eyes fixed on the landing pad feed. The ambassador's fingers trembled slightly, not from fear, Elena knew, but from the weight of words unsaid. They'd planned this parley for weeks, betting everything on dialogue over destruction. No weapons, no ultimatums. Just humans stubborn and unyielding. Kai snorted, wiping sweat from his brow. "Early or not, if this jammer holds, they won't pick up our signals. Gives us the edge without pulling a trigger." He was the optimist of the trio, his wit a shield against the galaxy's sharper edges. But even he glanced at the door when the shuttle's engines whined to a halt outside. The airlock cycled with a hiss, admitting 3 figures in iridescent armor that shimmered like oil on water. The lead alien, Vorik of the Krell Dominion, towered over his escorts, his multifaceted eyes scanning the room with mechanical precision. Elena stepped forward first, extending a hand in the universal gesture of peace. "Empty, open, human." "Vorik," she greeted, her voice cutting through the hum of the outpost generators. "Thank you for coming. We've prepared the chamber." The alien inclined his head, but his mandibles clicked in what their database flagged as suspicion. "Captain Voss, your refusal to engage our fleets intrigues us. Surrender would end this inconvenience." His voice, filtered through the translator, carried a buzzing undertone, like static over a forgotten calm line. Lila moved to Elena's side, her posture straight despite the fatigue etching lines around her eyes. "Surrender implies defeat. We're here to discuss alliance. The Dominion's expansion has strained your resources. Our scans show depleted mining colonies on 3 fronts. Humanity offers trade, not tribute." Vorik's escorts shifted, their armored boots scraping the floor. One raised a scanner, its beam sweeping across Kai's workbench. He froze, then casually knocked over a toolkit, scattering wrenches in a deliberate clatter. "Oops. Clumsy me. Just some maintenance gear, nothing to see here." The scan lingered, then beeped affirmatively. Vorik waved it off. "Your ingenuity is noted, human. But words alone do not sway the Krell. We require demonstration of intent." Elena nodded, leading them to the central chamber where a table of polished alloy awaited, flanked by viewports overlooking the stormy valley. Lightning forked across the sky, illuminating the jagged peaks where their hidden outposts lay camouflaged. They'd chosen this remote world for its defensibility, but also its isolation, far from the core world's watchful eyes. As they sat, Lila unrolled a holomap, projecting trade routes and resource yields. "See here, our agricultural tech could replenish your food stocks in half the cycle time. No fleets needed, no blockades. Mutual gain." Vorik leaned forward, his claws tapping the table rhythmically. "And if we decline? Your species scatters like dust before our advance. Why withhold the fight?" "Because fighting ends nothing," Elena replied, meeting his gaze. Her heart pounded, but she kept her tone even, the storm outside mirroring the tension within. "It just buries the dead higher. We've seen empires rise and fall on battlefields. Humanity chooses a different path." Kai chimed in from the side, his grin sharp. "Yeah, and our path includes fixing your hyperdrives without the hole exploding in your face part. Ever tried jury-rigging a warp coil with spit and optimism?" "We have." A low rumble echoed, not thunder but the ground shifting subtly beneath them. Vorik's eyes narrowed. "What is this?" Alarms blared suddenly, red lights pulsing across the chamber. Kai bolted to the console, fingers flying over keys. "Quake sensors, false alarm?" "No, wait." The floor buckled, a crack spiderwebbing from the viewport as the storm's fury unearthed an ancient fault line. Dust sifted from the ceiling and one of Vorik's escorts staggered, clutching his comm. Intrusion detected. "Saboteurs?" Panic flashed in Lila's eyes, but she grabbed Vorik's arm. "It's the planet, not us. Natural hazard, help us stabilize." Elena dove for the emergency seals, slamming panels as the structure groaned. Kai wrestled with the jammer, now sparking wildly, its circuits overloaded by the seismic interference. Vorik hesitated, then barked orders to his guards who deployed stabilizers from their suits, devices humming to life, anchoring the room against the tremor. The shaking peaked, a roar like tearing metal then subsided into aftershocks. Breathing hard, Elena straightened, wiping grit from her face. The holomap flickered out, but the alien scanners glowed steadily. Vorik's mandibles stilled. Your world tests you. As does ours. He regarded them anew, the suspicion in his eyes softening to something like respect. This parley survives. But deception will not. No deception, Elena assured, though her mind raced. Had the quake been coincidence or had their hidden preparations triggered it? Only survival. Together. As the storm raged on, the group huddled closer, the first fragile threads of understanding weaving through the debris. Outside, the valley's shadows deepened, hiding the outpost that now stood. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrest of her shuttle's command chair, her knuckles whitening as the vessel shuddered through the nebulous turbulent clouds. The swirling gases painted the viewport in hues of violet and crimson, like veins pulsing across a cosmic wound. She'd led her crew through worse, pirate blockades, ion storms that fried half their sensors, but this felt different. The Krell Armada loomed just beyond the haze, their massive dreadnoughts blotting out stars, engines humming with the promise of annihilation. Beside her, Lieutenant Marco Reyes wiped sweat from his brow, his usual easy grin replaced by a tight-lipped focus. Scans show they're holding position, Captain. No aggressive maneuvers yet. But their weapons arrays are hot, could light us up in seconds if they twitch. Ilara nodded, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. Keep us cloaked. We slip in, plant the device on their flagship, and get out. No heroics. The plan was audacious, born of desperation. A neural disruptor, human-engineered to overload the Krell's hive mind links without firing a shot. If it worked, it could fracture their command structure, buying the fractured alliance time to negotiate. If it failed, well, the nebula's radiation would erase them before the Krell even noticed. The shuttle dipped lower, weaving through a cluster of debris, remnants of a colony ship the Krell had vaporized weeks ago. Ilara's mind flashed to the briefings. The Krell, relentless expanders from the outer rim, driven by an unyielding collective will. They'd steamrolled human outposts, alien federations alike, demanding submission or oblivion. Earth had rallied what allies it could, but battles had turned to routs. Now, with fleets depleted, humanity's gamble was this: subversion over slaughter. Proximity alert, Reyes murmured, his fingers dancing over the console. Flagship dead ahead. Shields minimal. Looks like they're prepping for a jump. Ilara unstrapped, pulling on her EVA suit with practiced efficiency. You handle the flyby. I'll take the team across. She glanced at the other two, Dr. Lena Kaur, the device's creator, her cautious eyes framed by wire-rimmed glasses, and Sergeant Tomas Hale, the wiry demolitions expert whose wit had kept them sane through endless drills. Remember, we're ghosts. In and out. The airlock cycled with a hiss, and they jetted into the void, magboots silent against the shuttle's hull. The Krell flagship grew monstrous in their visors, a jagged behemoth of black alloy and glowing conduits, like a leviathan carved from night. Ilara's thrusters fired in microbursts, guiding them toward a service hatch amid the nebula's glow. One image burned in her mind, the faint scar on the hull from a prior skirmish, a human torpedo that had grazed but not breached. Lena's voice crackled over comms, laced with tension. The disruptor needs direct interface with their core nexus. If we miss the window, we won't, Ilara cut in, her breath fogging the helmet briefly. Hale grunted agreement, clipping a breaching charge to the hatch. It bloomed silently, a flower of molten edges, and they slipped inside. Corridors stretched like veins, pulsing with bioluminescent lights. The Krell crew, tall, chitinous forms with multifaceted eyes, patrolled in pairs, their movements synchronized, eerily efficient. Ilara's team hugged shadows, hearts pounding in unison. They rounded a corner and Hale froze, signaling halt. Two guards ahead, mandibles clicking in low-frequency chatter. Ilara weighed options: fight and risk alarm or improvise. Grit one out. She nodded to Hale, who palmed a compact EMP grenade, human ingenuity in a fist-sized orb. He lobbed it underhand. It rolled, sparked, and the guards convulsed, their neural implants shorting in a cascade of sparks. They slumped without a sound. "Nice throw," Lena whispered, stepping over the fallen. But as they pressed on, alarms blared, distant but closing. Reyes's voice cut through. "Captain, they've detected the breach. Shuttles taking fire, cloaking's failing." Tension coiled tighter. The core nexus lay 2 decks down, guarded by automated sentries. Ilara's mind raced, adapting on the fly. Hale rigged diversions. Lena prepped the device. "We move fast." They descended a maintenance shaft, the walls slick with condensation that gleamed like oil. Hale planted charges at junctions, setting time pops to mimic internal faults. Misdirection, pure and simple. One went off behind them, drawing patrols away, the echoes reverberating like thunder in a bottle. At the Nexus chamber, the air hummed with energy, the central console a throbbing heart of crystalline nodes. Lena knelt, interfacing the disruptor, her hands steady despite the sweat beading on her brow. Uploading, it's resisting. Their firewalls are adaptive. A sentry drone whirred to life, its laser turret swiveling. Ilara dove, tackling Hale aside as bolts seared the deck. She returned fire with her pulse rifle, the shots cracking against armor. "Tomas, flank it." He rolled, planting a sticky mine on its underbelly. The explosion was contained, a muffled whomp that shredded the drone into sparking fragments. But the damage was done. Reinforcements swarmed the corridor outside, their collective roar building like a storm. "Upload at 60%, Lena reported, voice edged with strain. Ilara covered the door, picking off the first wave, her shots precise but the numbers overwhelming. Reyes chimed in, "I'm circling back in 2 minutes." Captain Ilara Voss gripped the edge of the negotiation table, her knuckles whitening against the polished alloy surface. The chamber aboard the neutral station hummed with the low vibration of life support systems. But the air felt thicker now, laced with the sharp tang of overheated circuits from the latest failed demo. Across from her, Ambassador Crix of the Vexery Collective shifted his iridescent exoskeleton, his compound eyes flickering with what she hoped was curiosity rather than disdain. "See? No weapons. Just tools," Ilara said, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. She nodded to Dr. Liam Hale, who wiped sweat from his brow and tapped the holographic display. The projection flickered to life again, a simulation of their prototype, the Harmony Field Generator. It was meant to envelop a battlefield in a web of neural harmonics, not to harm but to sync the aggressor's fight responses with empathetic overrides. In theory, it turned rage into reluctant understanding. Crix's mandibles clicked softly. "Your tools disrupted our scout drones last cycle. 3 units lost cohesion, drifting aimlessly. This is peace." Liam leaned forward, his cautious optimism cracking under the strain. "It was a miscalibration. The field amplifies shared emotions, not erases them. Imagine your warriors feeling the enemy's fear as their own, enough to halt the charge to talk instead." But Ilara saw the doubt in Crix's posture, the subtle flare of his gill vents. The Vexery had been pushing their frontier fleets closer to human colonies for months, citing ancient territorial claims. Humanity's refusal to arm up had baffled them. Diplomats like her had ordered stand-downs, redirecting budgets to these untested innovations. Now, with the generator's first field test glitching, the stakes clawed higher. One more failure, and the collective's high command might deem talks a farce. "Run it again," Ilara urged, though her brave front hid the fear that this was the backfire they dreaded. Liam adjusted the parameters, his fingers flying over the controls. The hollow bloomed, virtual Vexery soldiers in mid-assault, their energy lances charging. The field expanded like a shimmering veil, and for a heartbeat the figures froze, lances lowering, forms huddling in confusion. Then the sim shattered. Alarms blared as the projection warped, the virtual troops convulsing in agony before dissolving into static. Real sparks flew from the console, and Liam yanked back, cursing under his breath. "Overload," he muttered, fumbling for the manual shutdown. Smoke curled up, acrid and accusing. Crix rose, his shadow looming. "This is your ingenuity? A device that mimics torment." His voice, translated through the implant, carried a hiss of betrayal. We came seeking resolution, not deception. If humanity will not fight, perhaps you cannot even defend your words. Alara's mind raced. The generator wasn't ready. Their rushed prototype had bonded too aggressively with the Sim's aggression algorithms, turning empathy into echo chamber pain. But admitting that now would shatter the fragile trust they'd built over weeks of sessions. Sergeant Mira Kane, stationed by the door with her arms crossed, shot Alara a warning glance. Mira, the witty ex-marine who'd traded her rifle for advisory role in these talks, had warned against overpromising. Humans win by adapting, not demo disasters, she'd quipped earlier. Ambassador, wait, Alara called, stepping around the table. She placed a hand on the warm edge of the generator's casing, feeling its residual hum. This isn't the end. Let us show you something real, not Sims but data from our own conflicts. How we ended wars without total surrender. Crix paused, his eyes narrowing to slits. Mira moved subtly closer, her presence a quiet anchor. Liam, ever the optimist, pulled up archived files on his pad, grainy vids of human ceasefires, treaties forged in the rubble of mutual exhaustion. No grand speeches, just weary leaders shaking hands across lines, choosing shared survival over scorched earth. The ambassador settled back, mandibles twitching. Data then. But if this proves hollow, our fleets advance tomorrow. Alara nodded, the weight of colonies hanging in the balance. As the first vid played, smoke clearing over a divided city, hands extended in truce, the chamber's tension eased a fraction. But in her chest the risk burned. One more push and their refusal to fight might force the Vexery's hand. Or worse, reveal that humanity's greatest weapon was its stubborn hope, fragile as the sparking machine beside her. The dim glow of the negotiation chamber cast long shadows across the curved walls, where holographic displays flickered like distant stars. Ambassador Lena Torres leaned forward in her seat, her fingers steepled, eyes locked on the Krell emissary. The alien's iridescent scales shifted from agitated crimson to a wary blue, a sign she'd learned meant reluctant consideration. Around the table the other delegates, the stoic Vorith with their armored hides, the chittering insectoid Siri, shifted uneasily, their translators humming with unspoken tensions. We've mapped the fault lines, Lena said, her voice steady, projecting the holomap into the center. It showed the fractured asteroid belt, a graveyard of shattered mining outposts where the resource war had begun. Your fleets control the outer rims but the core deposits are unstable. One wrong push and it all collapses, taking your ships with it. The Krell delegate, Zorgith, hissed through his Vox grill, mandibles clicking. You propose we yield the cores? After our losses? Humanity speaks of peace while hoarding its own worlds. Lena didn't flinch. She'd faced worse accusations in boardrooms back on Earth, where deals soured faster than milk. We're not hoarding. We're offering the extraction tech, non-lethal, precise. Drones that navigate the quakes without firing a shot. But it requires joint access. No sides, just survival. A Vorith grunted, its deep rumble echoing like grinding stone. And if we trust your drones? They could be weapons in disguise. She slid a data crystal across the table, its surface etched with schematics. Test them yourself. We've already deployed prototypes in the neutral zone. No explosions, no sabotage, just or flowing freely. Zorgith's scales flickered to a thoughtful green. He probed the crystal with a claw, the holomap updating in real time to show the drones weaving through debris, their paths elegant and unerring. For a moment, silence held, broken only by the Siri's anxious clicks. Then Zorgith leaned back. This ingenuity. It evades our warrior simulations. But concessions must be mutual. Withdraw your patrols from the inner belt or no deal. Lena nodded, masking the knot in her stomach. Withdrawing meant exposing human convoys to pirate raids, a risk that could cost lives. But refusal here meant escalation, and she'd seen enough holofeeds of burning stations to know the price of pride. Agreed, she said. Patrols pull back by dawn cycle. In return your enforcers stand down on the mining claims. The chamber buzzed as delegates murmured into their comms. Lena caught the eye of her aide, Marcus, who hovered at the edge of the light. His face was pale but he gave a subtle thumbs up, confirmation that the drones were indeed pulling double shifts, yielding enough or to prove the point without overpromising. As Zorgith signaled ascent, a tremor rippled through the station, the artificial gravity stuttering. Alarms hooped softly, and the holomap glitched, showing a fresh fracture in the belt. Not a quake from the asteroids, but sabotage, someone testing the fragile truce. Lena's pulse quickened. "That's no coincidence," she muttered to Marcus as they rose. "Get engineering on it. If this blows the deal." He was already moving, tablet in hand. Outside, in the corridor, human techs swarmed the access panels, their tools clanging against the alien alloy. Lena watched from the viewport, the stars beyond blurring into streaks as the station accelerated away from the belt. The Krell's refusal to fight had cracked open the door, but shadows lingered, old grudges, hidden agendas. Humanity's gamble was paying off, one reluctant handshake at a time, but the cost was etching lines on faces that wouldn't fade. By the time the tremor stabilized, the chamber reconvened. Zorgith's scales held steady blue. "Your machines intrigue us. Proceed with the joint venture. But mark this, betrayal and the stars will burn." Lena extended her hand, human custom bridging the gap. He hesitated, then clasped it with a clawed grip, firm but not crushing. As the pact sealed, she felt the weight of it, not victory but a step. The conflict wasn't ended, not yet, but for the first time the weapon stayed cold. Captain Alara Voss gripped the edge of the console, her knuckles whitening as the holographic display flickered with incoming transmissions. The negotiation chamber aboard the neutral station hummed with tension, the air recyclers whispering like distant ghosts. Outside the viewport, the debris field from the skirmish 2 cycles ago drifted lazily, twisted hulls of ships that had once been proud warships, now silent monuments to impulsive fury. Alex Rivera, her chief strategist, paced behind her, his usual wry smile absent. "They're stalling," he muttered, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "The Krell delegation knows we're onto their ploy. If we don't push back now, this whole refusal gambit unravels." Ilara nodded, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. "Patience has been our weapon so far. But you're right, patience without teeth is just surrender." She tapped the comms panel, activating the link to Ambassador Zara of the Lyrian Enclave. Zara's image materialized, her iridescent scales shifting from calm blue to agitated violet. "Captain Voss," Zara said, her multifaceted eyes narrowing. "The Krell fleet masses at the outer markers. They claim it's a defensive posture, but our sensors detect weapon signatures. Your humans' vow of nonviolence buys us time, but not eternity." Ilara leaned forward, choosing her words like steps on thin ice. "We've rerouted our aid convoys through their territory, food synthesizers, medical drones. No weapons, no threats. It's a gesture they can't ignore without looking like the aggressors." Alex interjected, his tone laced with that sharp humor that had defused more than one standoff. "Unless they're betting we'll crack first. Remember the simulations? If they feint an attack on a colony world, public opinion back home might force our hand." The chamber doors hissed open, admitting Dr. Lena Torres, the engineer whose quiet competence had patched more hull breaches than Alara cared to count. Lena carried a data slate, her face smudged with grease from the lower decks. "Captain, the modifications to the broadcast array are ready. But if we deploy the empathy waveform now, it'll expose our position. The Krell could jam it, or worse, trace it back." Ilara weighed the risks, the chamber's soft lighting casting long shadows across the group. The waveform was their ace, a human invention, blending neurolinguistics with subtle psychic harmonics, designed not to fight but to amplify understanding. It had worked in small tests, turning hostile negotiations into uneasy truces by making aggressors feel the weight of their own doubts. But scaling it to fleet-wide, that was uncharted. Zara's hologram flickered. "Do it. The Lyrians stand with you. Our ships will form a passive shield, no firing, just presence." Alex stopped pacing, his eyes lighting up. "Clever. They won't fire on a mixed formation without painting themselves as butchers. But if the waveform backfires..." "It won't," Lena said firmly, though her hands trembled slightly as she synced the slate to the console. "We've calibrated for Krell physiology. It'll make them relive their own histories of loss, the wars that hollowed their empires. Elara gave the order, her heart pounding in rhythm with the station's hum. The array powered up, a low thrum vibrating through the deck plates. Energy surged outward, invisible tendrils weaving through the void toward the Krell armada. For a moment, silence. Then, the transmissions erupted, Krell voices, fragmented and raw, overlapping in a cacophony of alien tongues. Shouts of confusion, orders unraveling. On the display, Krell ships veered erratically, some powering down weapons arrays, others broadcasting pleas for dialogue. "It's working," Zara breathed, her scales brightening to a hopeful green. But triumph soured quickly. A priority alert blared. One Krell cruiser, defiant, broke formation and accelerated toward the station. Its guns glowed hot, locked on. "They're not all convinced," Alex said, his voice tight. "That one's captain must be shielded or just stubborn." Elara's mind raced. Evacuate? No, that would shatter the nonviolence pledge. Fight back? Impossible. "Lena, can we modulate the waveform, target that ship specifically?" Lena's fingers flew over the controls. As the immediate threat receded, Elara exhaled, the weight lifting fractionally. But the station's core temperature climbed, warning indicators flashing. They'd bought time, exposed a vulnerability in the Krell psyche, yet the cost lingered. Repairs would take cycles, and trust, if regained, would be fragile. Captain Elara Voss gripped the armrest of her command chair, the hum of the bridge's consoles a faint vibration through the deck plating. The view screen dominated the forward wall, displaying the swirling nebula that had become their unlikely sanctuary, and now their greatest threat. Ion storms crackled across the gas clouds, painting the void in electric blues and furious purples. Her crew, down to just her, navigator Kai Rin and engineer Lila Torres, had been dodging these tempests for days, ever since the Galactic Concorde's blockade turned the sector into a no-man's land. "Stabilizers at 80%, Lila reported from her station, her voice steady but laced with the exhaustion of endless repairs. Sweat beaded on her forehead, illuminated by the glow of diagnostic readouts. Kai, ever the cautious one, leaned over his NAV console, fingers dancing across holographic charts. His brow furrowed deeper with each flicker of the storm's interference. Elara nodded, her jaw set. The Concorde's armada loomed on the edge of sensor range, dozens of sleek alien vessels, their weapons primed, waiting for the humans to make a move. But humanity's gambit had been no move at all. No retaliatory strikes, no desperate alliances. Just a broadcast, looping across every frequency. A simple offer of shared knowledge untainted by conquest. The galaxy, forged in cycles of war, couldn't comprehend it. Refusal to fight had fractured their unity, sowing doubt among the ranks. Now the nebulous fury was closing in, a natural barrier turning predator. Kai, plot us a vector through the outer arm. We can't stay pinned here. He hesitated, his witty edge dulled by fatigue. Captain, that's suicide. The storms are unpredictable, could fry our shields in seconds. We've got maybe one good burn left before the engines give out. Lila chimed in, wiping her hands on her jumpsuit. He's right. I've patched what I can, but the core's overheating. One wrong surge and we're drifting scrap. Elara's mind raced, the weight of the crew's trust pressing like the nebula's gravity. She remembered the first transmissions from Earth. Diplomats, not warriors, pleading for understanding. Her ship, the Odyssey, had been a scout, meant to observe. But observation turned to evasion when the Concorde declared them outlaws for subverting the natural order. Now, with the blockade tightening, their refusal had become a spark. Reports trickled in via encrypted bursts, fringe worlds questioning the war, crews defecting. A sharp alarm blared, red lights strobing across the bridge. The storm's leading edge slammed into them, shields buckling under the assault. Consoles sparked, Elara tasted ozone. Evasive. Kai now. The ship lurched as Kai punched the thrusters, weaving through a lattice of plasma arcs. A bolt grazed their hull, and Lila cursed, diving under her panel to reroute power. Holding, barely. We're venting atmosphere in the lower decks. Elara unstrapped, moving to Kai's side. The view screen showed the Concorde ships advancing, opportunistic shadows against the chaos. They wouldn't enter the nebula themselves, too risky, but they didn't need to. The storm would do their work. Options, she said, voice low. Kai glanced up, his eyes sharp. We could signal them. Use the storm as leverage. Offer coordinates to a safe passage through the nebula. In return, they let our broadcast through unjammed. Lila emerged, toolkit in hand. Bold. But if they bite, it proves the point. Cooperation over conquest. Alara waited. Risky, yes. The Concorde's admirals were prideful, their fleets built on dominance. But fractures were showing, whispers of mutiny, worlds withholding tribute. Humanity's stand had exposed the rot. Do it, she decided. Open a wideband channel. No weapons hot. Kai complied, his fingers steady now. The comms hissed to life, Alara stepping forward. This is Captain Alara Voss of the human vessel Odyssey. We're trapped in the nebula, but so is your path to unity. Share our data on navigating these storms, ancient human charts, mapped by explorers not soldiers. In exchange, amplify our message of peace. Fight the storm with us or watch it consume everything. Silence stretched, broken only by the rumble of another ion surge. Then, a response crackled through, hesitant, from a Concorde frigate. Human, your words are anomalous. Data acknowledged. We consider. The bridge held its breath. Lila patched a smile through the tension. That's progress. Not surrender, but a crack. As the storm raged on, the first Concorde ship edged closer, its shields flickering in sync with theirs. Alara watched, the nebula's glow casting long shadows. The cost was already tallied, lost crew, scarred hulls, but in this refusal, a new alliance flickered to life, fragile as starlight. Elena gripped the edge of the negotiation table, her knuckles whitening against the cool alloy surface. The chamber aboard the neutral station hummed with the low vibration of life support systems, a reminder that this fragile piece hung on threads thinner than vacuum. Across from her sat High Arbiter Vex of the Zorith Collective, his multifaceted eyes flickering with calculations no human mind could match. Jax stood at her shoulder, his fingers twitching toward the hidden comm device in his sleeve, ready to signal the evacuation if talks collapsed again. Kree, the Zorith defector who'd become their unlikely bridge, shifted uneasily in the shadows, his iridescent scales dulling under the strain. We've laid it all bare, Elena said, her voice steady despite the ache in her chest. Your fleets encircle our colonies, but humanity isn't arming for war. We're offering the fusion schematics, clean energy that could power your dying stars. In return, safe passage for our refugees. No shots fired, no blood spilled. Vex's mandibles clicked softly, a sound like cracking ice. Your ingenuity is, but the collective demands guarantees. Your species has a history of adaptation that borders on deception. Why trust this refusal to fight? Jax leaned in, his wit cutting through the tension like a laser. Because fighting's a lousy investment, Arbiter. We've run the sims, your tech outguns ours 10-1. But we've also mapped your supply lines. One EMP cascade and your armada goes dark. We're not bluffing, we're just smarter about picking battles we can't win with fists. Kree stepped forward then, his voice a gravelly whisper that echoed his divided loyalties. Arbiter, I served in your ranks. I saw the projections. Humanity's non-violence isn't weakness, it's a weapon. They flood our channels with data, not destruction. Broadcasts of their history, worlds rebuilt from ashes, alliances forged in famine. If we strike, we ignite a fire that consumes us all. The chamber fell silent, save for the distant thrum of docking clamps securing another human shuttle outside. Vex's eyes dimmed, processing. Elena held her breath, remembering the faces of the colonists they'd evacuated, families huddled in cryopods, betting everything on this moment. The early plan, that bold cultural exchange broadcast, had backfired spectacularly when Zorith hardliners jammed the signals, nearly sparking skirmishes. But it had cracked the facade, drawing Kree to their side and exposing the collective's internal fractures. Finally, Vex extended a claw, not in threat but invitation. Transmit the schematics now. And prepare your envoys, we convene the full council at dawn cycle. But know this, one misstep and the refusal ends. Elena nodded, signaling Jax to initiate the transfer. As the data streamed, a weight lifted, not victory but momentum. Outside, through the viewport, the stars blurred with incoming ships, human and Zorath alike, drawn by the promise of something new. Yet she couldn't shake the shadow of consequence. Colonies left vulnerable, alliances that might yet fray. Peace, it seemed, was as much a gamble as war. The council chamber hummed with the low thrum of translators, a vast dome of iridescent crystal that caught the light from a dozen alien suns filtering through the orbital station's viewports. Captain Alara Voss stood at the center podium, her flight suit still dusted with the red clay of New Terra's surface, where the evacuation had wrapped up just hours ago. Flanking her were the two constants of her crew, Dr. Kai Ren, the wiry xenobiologist whose fingers twitched like they itched to dissect the tension in the room, and Engineer Mira Sol, broad-shouldered and unyielding, her toolkit slung over one shoulder as if ready to fix the galaxy itself. The assembled delegates, towering insectoids from the Hive Collective, fluid shapeshifters from the Veil Enclave, and the blocky metallic forms of the Forge Alliance, shifted in their seats. Their eyes, multifaceted or glowing or hidden behind visors, fixed on Alara. The war had dragged on for cycles, a grinding stalemate of blockades and skirmishes that had claimed billions. Humanity's fleets, outnumbered and outgunned, had held the line through sheer stubborn adaptation, but the cost was etched in every human face. Hollow cheeks, scarred hands, the quiet grief that bound them tighter than any chain of command. "We refuse," Alara said again, her voice steady, cutting through the murmurs like a knife through silk. She met the gaze of the Hive Queen's proxy, its mandibles clicking in what might have been disbelief. "Not out of fear. Not surrender. We refuse to continue this cycle of fire and ash. Pull your ships from the neutral lanes and we'll match you, every vessel, every outpost withdrawn." Kai leaned in, his whisper barely audible over the rising din. "They're calculating the angles. The math doesn't favor escalation if we hold." Mira grunted, crossing her arms. "Math's only half of it. They need to feel it." The shapeshifter delegate rippled, its form elongating into something vaguely humanoid to better mimic Alara's posture, a gesture of attempted empathy that came off as mocking. "Your species has fought with ingenuity unmatched, clinging to barren rocks, turning scrap into shields. Why halt now when victory teeters?" Alara's jaw tightened, but she didn't rise to the bait. Instead, she activated the hollow projector at her wrist. Images bloomed in the air, not battle footage but the aftermath. Human children planting seeds in hydroponic bays salvaged from wrecks. Families rebuilding habitats on moons thought lost. The quiet triumph of a colony's first harvest under dual suns. Because victory like that isn't worth the graves it digs. "We've mapped your supply lines, cracked your encryption, same as you've done to us. We could drag this out for another decade, bleeding everyone dry. Or we end it here." The Forge Alliance's representative clanged a fist on its console, servos whining. "End it? With words? Your kind's ingenuity birthed weapons that scarred 3 systems. And yours built the blockades that starved them," Mira shot back, her voice a low rumble. She stepped forward, unholstering a small device from her belt. Not a weapon but a prototype relay, its casing etched with human script. "But look, this isn't for fighting. It's for linking. Shared networks, open trade routes. No more secrets fueling the fear." Kai nodded, his eyes sharp behind his glasses. "We've already tested it on the fringe worlds. Your scouts confirmed the data flows, clean, verifiable. Pull back and we integrate. Fight on and we dismantle it all, piece by encrypted piece." The chamber fell silent, save for the soft whir of cooling systems. The Hive proxy's antennae quivered, processing. Alara felt the weight of it all, the lives hanging on this bluff-turned truth. Her crew had spent months wiring the refusal into every human asset. Self-destruct protocols not for destruction but for revelation. Expose the war's underbelly, the mutual deceptions, and let the rot force peace. The shapeshifter reformed, settling into a neutral blob. Audacious, reckless, but logical. A pause, then a ripple of assent from the others. "We withdraw." Tentatively. Relief washed through Alara like cool air after a storm, but it was tempered. As the session adjourned, delegates filing out with grudging nods, she caught Myra's eye. "Won't be easy. They'll test us." Mira smirked, clapping her shoulder. "Let 'em. We've got the grit for it." Outside, the station's corridors thrummed with activity, human techs already coordinating the pullback, voices overlapping in that familiar cadence of camaraderie forged in crisis. New Terra's lights twinkled below, a beacon unbroken. The war's end wasn't fireworks or fanfare. It was this, the quiet pivot from destruction to something shared, fragile but real. And in the lingering shadows of what they'd lost, humanity stepped forward, not as conquerors but as the ones who'd chosen differently.